this yoga come from? And how come most Punjabi people have not heard of it, you know? And eventually, like, I still haven't heard a definite answer. To me, it was explained that when Baba Siri Chand ji bowed down to Guru Ramdas ji, and, you know, when he was, or, you know, after he, like, cleaned his feet with his beard, that whole story we all know, that's when the intersection of Sikhi and yoga happened, and that's where the lineage of Kundalini Yoga as part of Sikhi comes from. But I wanted to hear, you know, if you
A
have
lot,
anything
a
to add
lot
to
of these, a lot of these understandings are based off of a conjecture of how and where can we pinpoint it. It happens from the very beginning, as we've already talked about. What does yoga actually mean? It has two definitions according to the Sanskrit. The first is coming from, you know, where the word actually comes from, because the most similar word we have to it in today's language is to yoke, and to yoke means to pull.
that.
So it means a science or a theory or a philosophy that pulls you towards a destination. But really, that's me conjecturizing myself, because it just literally is the verb to pull in ancient Sanskrit. Like, I'm pulling you like this, you know, literally. So that's and later on, it starts to be used in different ways. Eventually, it becomes an understanding of to be pulled towards a realization, and then ultimately union, yog. That is the coming together of two. And Japji Sahib actually has the word yog in it many times. Sanjog, Vejog, Doekar Chalave, Leke Ave Pag. You know, the word yog is in there. So yog enters into Sikhi the moment that Guru Nanak starts teaching. That's my argument. But what is Guru Nanak's yoga? Is it asana? Is it hatha yoga? Is it some other system? No, no, it's not. It's something very specific. And we've got the historical evidence of what it was. But the main understanding is it formalizes itself over time as Gurmukh Yoga Vyas, and Gurmukh Yoga Vyas then manifests itself into different technologies, different expressions. So it ends up diversifying. And one of the ways it diversifies is by the time of Guru Gobind Singh, he creates a system where Guru Nanak's, you know, yogic teachings can be combined with physical practice that aligns with what the soldiers need to maintain their body, how they can attain high levels of spiritual realization without having to carry grunts with them everywhere. You know, they don't have the ability to have Vichar Sagar with them or court texts of Guru Gobind Singh with them. They were a functioning army, but how were they, you know, how were their spiritual needs being met? Through a system called Shabd Kriya Yoga. Whether that was spread across the entire Khalsa army or not, I can't dictate that. But what I can say is based upon the tradition that I come from, which stems from Guru Gobind Singh's Nagarji. So Guru Gobind Singh's Nagarji, his name is Baba Ajapal Singh.
What's a
He passed.
Nagachi?
Nagarji is a player of the war drum.
Okay.
So Guru Gobind Singh gives him a system of meditation called Shabd Kriya Yoga, which is developed understanding Gurmukh Yoga Vyas specifically, that combines the science of asana and pranayam to create kriyasana, and matches that with the understanding of mantra. So therefore, Shabd Kriya Yoga, because through my kriyasana, I'm gaining a deeper understanding of the Shabd, which is the ultimate experience. Baba Ajapal Singh passes it down to Akali Baba Dhyana Singh, who then initiates Baba Sahib Singh Bedi into another lineage of this systematic yoga, but it's not Shabad Kriya Yoga. It's the older form of Gurmukh Yoga Vyas. We know that because we've got historical evidence for it. Baba Dhyana Singh has a son called Baba Himmat Singh, who becomes Shaheed, just like Baba Dhyana Singh during the period of the Anglo-Sikh Wars. The son of Baba Himmat Singh, Baba Gurmukh Singh, then receives the science. His son, Baba Teja Singh, and his adopted son, Sant Hazara Singh, then receive the science. And then it goes on to Yogi Bhajan. And so that's the lineage, and it's called the Sher Yogi lineage, because the identity of this lineage is based upon Rishi Dushtadaman and this science and this understanding of a combined technology of yogic soteriology. So that is Adhyatmika Vidya, that is Brahm Vidya, with a martial identity. A bit like how Bodhidharma began to fuse the esoteric understanding of Buddhism with a need to develop an understanding of self-defense. You know, we've seen this kind of pattern happen in different sciences across the world. And this is what this system is
And
of
we
Shabad
were, we
Kriya
were
Yoga.
talking about this lineage before, and you were saying that there is another reference which was calls back to this. And I was kind of saying like, wow, you know, there's a debate about there's two different schools of Taksal, and one of them says we're authentic and the other one says I'm authentic. And some people say Taksal itself is not actually authentic. They claim to go back to Baba Deep Singh and they actually don't. And I mean, you know, the point is there's debates about lineage. And when we're talking about a Shabd Kriya Yoga lineage going directly to Guru Gobind Singh, to the Hajat Hajuri Sikhs, that's something most people haven't heard. But then you were saying, yes, but there's been outside references, not just from Babaji, who you have learned from, and not just from Yogi Bhajan.
Yeah.
There was outside references. And I said, well, is there even outside references? Is there that many historic confirmations about other traditions of Sikhi?
Right.
Because the conclusion somehow in the conversation we came to, well, then this is even more authentic or more verified Sikhi than other very, very well accepted traditions.
100. This is the fundamentals of it, really. You know, look at how little evidence there is for the historic Jesus. No one criticizes the Western world for it, though. Some people do, but you know, overarchingly, Jesus existed. He must have. This science, Shabd Kriya Yoga, existed. Fundamentally, it must have. Because I'm sorry, one trumped up individual coming to the West couldn't invent an entire system by himself. It's impossible with the depth, with the contextual interwovenness of the whole reality of what it is. He couldn't. What he did do, though, was develop the science. He didn't keep the name Shabd Kriya Yoga. Its name changed to Kundalini Yoga. It wasn't taught in the traditional way that it had been transmitted in the past. He developed it. He you know, gave it another definition altogether, as each different teacher of the tradition would have over time anyway. You know, so a lot of the things, the kriyas that he suggested, a lot of the different aspects of practice that he was you know, bringing to the table was also in an intercontextual debate with other traditions as well of spirituality, which is interesting because, you know, when we look at Yogi Bhajan's other teachers like Baba Virsa Singh, Darendra Yogacharya, and others, you know, this is the same as when a ragi goes from one ustad and then decides to go to different aspects of the subcontinent of India and diversify their understanding of Hindustani music in general. You know, people can critique Yogi Bhajan for learning from other teachers and say, oh, well, he pulled from here and pulled from there. But that's wrong. Because where is he getting the overarching science of what we would call Shabd Kriya Yoga from? Where is it coming from? You can say he stole this asana, you can say he stole that mantra, but who decided to then put asana, kriyasana, you know, pranayam and mantra together via the science of what we actually find within older Gurmukhi texts, you know?
Bruce Lee did this. He studied all kinds of martial arts and then he created his own brand called Jeet Kune Do, which didn't exist until he created it. Nobody really questioned the authenticity of that or whether or not they came from legitimate techniques or traditions and stuff. But my question was more like, you have Sardar Kapoor Singh, who is outside. He's not part of the Yogi Bhajan group, and yet he's verifying this is authentic teachings. And I believe you mentioned there was at least one more outside reference which is quite sufficient when it comes to in terms of verifying a Sikh tradition.
Right. You know, you've got the fact that Baba Sahib Singh Bedi, the descendant of Guru Nanak, is initiated into the Khalsa by Baba Dhyana Singh. You know, it's a really fundamental thing that happens because Baba Sahib Singh Bedi's lineage of teaching would then be responsible for creating Mahapurukhs like Baba Isha Singh. You know, the Hoti Mardan lineage, the Nirmal Kutia lineage, the really important Punjabi bastions of Sant Nirmala teaching, not to be confused with the Nirmale of Kanshi, very different groups. You know, but very different bastions of expressing the same science of Shabbat-Centrism, but you find it, you know, and so there's many references to this lineage and aspects of it. And that's all that's actually needed. Because if you start proning into this lineage any further than that, then you then have to raise your finger at the people who are doing the same thing from their high positions. Or you're from Taksal. Well, how can you substantiate your lineage? You're from the Nirmale of Kanchi. How do we substantiate that without historical references from the 17, 1800s? You know, like, you know, you're a tradition that manifests out of nowhere all of a sudden. You know, like, if we do this to this tradition, we're damaging our understanding of the sampradaya in general, because then we're going to start probing into them and finding inconsistencies and then saying, oh, we don't have any authentic tradition. This is not correct. This is not, history is not necessarily always linear or black and white, or it can't always tell us what we want to hear. But what we can start substantiating is based upon what we have. How did that come to be? How did that develop? And when we've got different historical components coming together that reveal that, then we're able to go, actually, yeah, this substantiates it pretty solidly.
So what is an example of a Shabd Kriya Yoga that might not be taught by Yogi Bhajan with Kundalini Yoga? Is it the same? Do we have teachings of
So
Shabd Kriya Yoga
the kriyas are pretty similar most of the time. Consistently, I'd say 98% similar. There's percentage difference though. The way it's taught is like almost 90% different as well. You know, Shabd Kriya Yoga was taught in a very systematic way, where there's 5 steps and 5 different levels, and you're moving across a soteriological development, like almost like a black belt level in karate. So every time you progress, you get a different aspect of mantra, you traverse different aspects of knowledge. Some people don't progress to certain levels, and so then they're taught to go off to master different things that they're more better off doing. So, you know, it's a very complex system in its own right. But of course, when Yogi Bhajan comes to the West, why should he teach it in that way? He has to consolidate these teachings in a way that they survive, because that was his main mission of why he was sent out in the first place, and that they can be consumed by the West as well. You know, he had to think like a businessman at certain points, and you can critique him for that, but also applaud him for the way he was able to market these rare teachings, and also at the same time allow them to be in conversation with what was going on at that time. You know, and people are forgetting this.
Well, I think that there's a component that people might be forgetting it, but people might not actually know, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we have this part of our conversation, you know, that's recorded now, and I want to make sure you guys are all good with that, you know, and the basis of that, if this does get shared, that we're having, you know, kind of an agreement to all that. You know, we've been talking for hours here at this point. I loving it, like just soaking it all in, just really love just the conversation around it. But I would want to know, like, you know, especially for a larger audience who might see this, what are those 5 levels, and what are those 5 kriyas, and what are those elements of it, and to have that as a context, because what we know of Kundalini Yoga as it exists now is based on from what Yogi Bhajan has taught. So what is it that he had not taught, and a system that was not taught by him, that gives some contextualization to doing what he did and why he did it?
Right. Look, firstly,
Can I ask it in this way? Can I bring up a specific kriya? Because when it comes to Kundalini Yoga and Sikhi, you cannot ignore Sudarshan Chakra Kriya, because it is such a powerful thing that Guru Nanak must have traveled and met the Jadevis and found whatever volumes of scriptures, and from them selected, the Guru Arjan ultimately selected 2 Shabads from the entire tradition. And one of them is the description of how to hold your breath, how many times, these are methodologies of how to meditate, and pranayam. So when people say, well, with Sikhs, we don't have to do pranayam, that's just, you know, yogis plugging in their noses and standing on their heads. But it's written in the Guru Granth Sahib to inhale through the left nostril, to hold your breath, to repeat God's name 16 times. The question is, the way we were taught it was you have to focus on the nose, and you have to pump your navel 3 times. Those things are not specified, and neither is the mantra of Vaheguru specified. It says chant 16 times. If you look at, there's a shtick that I was trying to introduce this concept to somebody. Repeat the Lord's name. So I mean, but it's very ancient language, and it doesn't say like Ram ka naam japavo or something like that. It's actually it's not in Punjabi, so that's a translation. Anyways, the shtick that's written to describe in Punjabi what the meaning of this is, if they specify by Gyani, I don't know who wrote the shtick, that you have to chant Ong 16 times, and that does not mention the nose or the nabi anything. And so when I saw that, I was like, huh, that means that somebody out there, is that a tradition that says you chant Om 16 times? Is there different versions of Sudarshan Chakra Kriya that are in different kind of sub lineages of Shabd Kriya Yoga? Like if Sahib Singh Bedi had done this Kriya, did he do it in a slightly different way, that it was focused on the third eye rather than the nose? There is no navel pumping. I'd imagine
look,
there should be different versions of it.
When I was talking about Sat Kriya with you before, you know, and how I was taught it compared to how you've been taught it, you know, it was very different, but it was similar. So that was what was exciting, because you know, I'd never been taught it within the context of the way that the 3HO or KRI teaches it, which is you know, the slow pumping Satnam technique. You know, I was taught it with the Kapalabhati technique. So, you know, you're pumping, inhaling and exhaling with equal measurement. And you're focusing on your Dasam Dwar. You're in Padmasana with your hands in Anjali Mudra. So like, you know, what you call prayer pose above your head. And, you know, you're physically projecting, you know, the energy you're directing it rather to go up to the crown chakra. It's an exercise to unlock the Sukhamana Nadi, essentially, the Shushmana, the central nervous system, to unblock it of its, you know, impurities, or however you want to describe them.
So the difference here, obviously, actually,
and visualization is employed as well. You know, you visualize the luminous, you know, Prakash, the syllables of Ikwankar in Prakash and luminosity at your crown chakra. So it's very orientated around the soteriology of Shabbat, you know, that one exercise, you know.
And so the differences there, the key differences are that you do it in Padmasana, you do it with your hands closed. That is the original way that it was taught in Kundalini Yoga. Actually, it's 7 beats per 10 seconds, which is slightly less than 1 second per repetition. Sat, nam, sat, nam. So it is kind of fast, and a lot of people will slow it down, but if you actually look at what is written, it's very specific to be 7 per every 10 seconds. The way you had done it was definitely different, but the key difference was it's focus on the nose in one of them. Sorry, in Kundalini Yoga, it's focused on the third eye. In the way you were taught is focus on the Dasam Dwar. And there's an additional visualization, which they didn't specify in Kundalini Yoga. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about. These are the kinds of differences you should observe. The Jeet Kundo system will teach exactly when you punch, you have to hit with these 2 knuckles and your arm has to come from this angle. And the Kung Fu and the Tai Chi people will have, like karate will have.
In other words, there's crossovers between is a crossover of interdisciplinary systems, you know, and that's, you know, the language as well. That's what's just as important. It's the crossover of language and it's the crossover of technique, you know. So what the 5 systems are, to keep it brief, not go into too much detail. The first system focuses on the awakening of the Kundalini. The second aspect, the first is the Sat Kriya, so it's coming into truth. Then is the awakening of the Kundalini. Then the third aspect is the balancing of the 5 elements, the purification of them in the body, the understanding of their correspondence with many different aspects of pairs of 5, and ultimately realizing the Panch Shabad, Sata, Nama, A, and then understanding how those syllables classify 5 sounds that are internalized within the body, which we call the, you know, Panch Shabad. And the Panch Shabad are 5 sounds that we actually hear every day in our body. I can't believe I'm saying that. It's a bit secret. I shouldn't just blurt that out, but it's the truth. The fourth system is Sudarshan Chakra Kriya, and the final aspect is something called Puran Pran Tap or Sampuran Pran Tap, which is basically where we work with the 3 forms of pranayam, which is Purak, Kumbhak and Rechak, and we basically then go into the process of completely dissolving the mind. So this is the dissemblance of the being. It's what we call the reverse engineering of the self, essentially, and cause the self to be dissolved in the ultimate experience of what is called Akal Prakash, or Shabad, what's it called? Sorry, my mind's just gone blank here. Too many terms racing through my head. Shabad Avastha, Akal Avastha, Shabad Avastha. Or Braham Gyan, essentially, as Sukhmani Sahib nicely puts it. And so these are the 5 steps. They're called the Panchpad of Shabd Kriya. And so when we go to the second Kriya, which is the awakening of the Kundalini energy, by the time we finished it, we access a stream of knowledge called Kriya Sar, which means the ocean of Kriya. Because we've awakened the Kundalini, or the Prachand Shakti as it's supposed to be called, which is the potency in our own innate being, what basically awakens. We then have the ability to then practice different forms of Kriyasana that can repair our body, help our body, do all the wacky kind of cool stuff. Once we've finished the Panchabhuta Shuddha Kriya system, which is the purification of the 5 elements, we then open another stream of knowledge called Mantra Sar, where we have the ocean of mantra. So then you're taught all of the different combinations of mantra, also how to confidently combine different aspects of Gurbani to create mantra. How to receive mantra as well, because a lot of the knowledge that you will receive will come from, higher consciousness, higher realms of whatever. Let's not talk about that. So you get the picture. So it's systematized in a very specific way. Why did Yogi Bhajan not teach this? Well, there could be 2 reasons. Number one, my teacher decided to create the system exclusively for me so that he could guide me through the steps. But he never said that. Or Yogi Bhajan, through his diversification of the knowledge of Shabd Kriya Yoga and him diversifying it through different systematizations and understandings of yoga and the need to present it to the West, created something that would fit within that context, within a multiplicity of students, both male and female, from different cultural settings in a better way. And I feel that that's actually what the case is. He does teach aspects of this in steps that are similar, but at the same time, he chose to, as a master of the lineage, teach it as he wished. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to critique it.
Yeah, it makes sense, because if you have students coming to Kundalini Yoga class and every time they're just doing 30 to 60 minutes of Sat Kriya, eventually these Americans are going to stop coming. If, I just have to go do 60 minutes of Sat Kriya. Whereas Americans love variety, and you never really know what you're going to get out of a Kundalini Yoga class. It may be hard.
I mean, my first lesson from my teacher was doing 108 prostrations of Mool Mantra. So that's like doing a full Dandot. If you don't know what that is, it's like lying down on your body and then coming back up and doing that while I circumambulated the shrine that I was learning at. That was not fun. It was not easy. It wasn't make sure the rocks that are in your way, you sweep them away first. It's you lie down where you lie down and you continue walking. And if I see you moving a rock, that's you're in trouble. Like it wasn't fun. Then it was performing those first 2 aspects of Sat Kriya and the Kundalini Jagrat Kriya, and they're really difficult. They're not easy. They're hard, and I was made to do them for hours while listening to an old man talk lots of knowledge to me, which I wasn't really prepared to receive in any way, shape, or form. But I had to then empty my vessel to receive. It was transformative. It was difficult. It was molding. It was hard. That method of teaching you can't bring to the West. Like you can't do that. The people will run out of the door. Osho, he just sat there and like somehow transmitted this bliss vibe to people. People, all sorts of teachers, when they came to the West, completely changed the conversation of the way they transmitted teachings. But I did not have that pleasure, and I'm glad that I didn't. But why would a teacher go to such an extreme to make sure that people do have the ability to access these teachings? Because number one, again, we're talking about a lineage which was hunted by the British because it organized and martialized individuals. It was a threat to the developing understanding of mainstream Sikhi at the time as well. Yogi Bhajan comes to the West and he decides that not only will he transmit these teachings as a wacky form of yoga, but he will also inspire them to become Khalsa and embody this technology, as was seen by the vision of the masters of the lineage prior to Yogi Bhajan, was that one day everybody can access this, including the system called Mahatantra. It's not meant for one individual at one time to call themselves Mr. Mahatantric, and only they can access this divine, uncontrollable, universal, infinite energy. No, that's a load of rubbish. It's a title, it's a crown of spirituality that belongs to the Khalsa and is invested by the Khalsa to be invested in the Khalsa for the Khalsa. Because, the mastery of different understandings and technologies of spirituality is our job. Can we traverse the boundaries of plurality and unite the world in a way that allows them to exist in their pluralistic expression whilst embracing a universal truth? Because Guru Gobind Singh says, "Char varn ek varn karao, Vaheguru Singh ko naam japao, chare mukt tis mukt karao." There's a very clear hukum that get the people of this planet to jap the name Vaheguru. How are they going to do that if there's not the ambassadors of spirituality that exist there to be able to converse in the language of the multiplicity of tradition that's out there? Well, I'm just going to sit there and go, "You damn well better chant Guru Mantra." And it doesn't work that way, So Yogi Bhajan Singh, in that sense, was a pioneer for preserving a tradition by allowing it to evolve and adapt to the situation of, what he's called the father of the Woodstock Nation for a reason. He fathered this development of a changing, developing consciousness. It's amazing, We can sit here and look at his negative qualities, or we can sit here and actually look at some of the really difficult work that was done, where powerful concepts of consciousness were translated into something that could be understood by the masses.
There's positive and there's negative, and then there's history. And history should have an even eye, and
it should always be objective.
How do these things weigh out?
100%.
What impact does it actually have on the world?
Mm.
But I've been waiting to ask this question because we did go into a little bit of the minutia of Shabd Kriya, but it was actually, we're trying to talk about Sudarshan Chakra Kriya. And I have not heard you describe how to do Sudarshan Chakra Kriya. You don't have to. In fact, maybe please don't at this moment describe the exact technique. But I do want to ask you if you can say in general terms, you did mention it, so that means you had been taught it. Is there some marked differences between the method that I described and how we have
so Darshan Chakra Kriya has other steps in it that were taught as separate Kriyas to you guys, but actually part of the system of this fifth step. The fifth step is about unblocking, or basically unknotting, the three granthis of the body. The three granthis of the body are the Vishnu Granthi, the Shiva Granthi, Brahma Granthi, or Rudra Granthi and Brahma Granthi. And that can only be done through Sudarshan Chakra Kriya. So the three knots or energy blocks in our body that prevent the Kundalini from rising to each section of the chakras. There's 3, 6, the next 3. But anyway, we're not going into chakras today. That's a whole different thing. Yogi Bhajan talked about an 8th chakra. This is very advanced stuff for his time and even for now, but Sudarshan Chakra Kriya has different aspects, and one of them is called, it's the recitation of a mantra called the Singh Khalsa Narsingh Astotra, which was given to us by the mothers of the Khalsa. We don't know specifically which one. You know, my teacher told me that there were different aspects of the tradition, meaning there was more than one interpretation of tradition. At different times had said that, you know, this mantra was given by Mata Jita Ji, someone else said Mata Sahib Devi, another one said Mata Sundari, which is, you know, Har Singh, Nar Singh, Neel Narayan, Gur Singh, Har Har, you know, that mantra that you recite. So this is part of the Sudarshan Chakra Kriya. You know, at a certain stage, we stop doing the Sudarshan Chakra Kriya as you would know it, and we start moving on to something called the Narsingh Kriya. And it's, you know, the Kriyas that are attached to the main Kriya so as to allow it to develop energetically and then move into the process of Sampurna Prantap. So there's at least 3 or 4 different other components to the Kriya.
If one is to recite that whole Shabad, or I don't know if you want to call it mantra or Shabad, the Har Singh, Nar Singh, while chanting and holding the breath 16
No, that's
times,
not how it's done. That's
16
not how it's
doesn't
done.
then apply.
No, I said that mantra goes with a different Kriya that is attached to the original Kriya, but once you've done the Kriya for a certain amount of time, you then develop into this next Kriya so as to balance the energy, go into another level of visualization and realization. With unblocking each one of the Granthis, there's a direct visualization, Kriya and mantra that goes with that. And the Narsingh is the last one because the last Granthi is the Vishnu Granthi, and that one directly associates with the visualization, energy, and understanding of Narsingh Avatar.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
Chakra Kriya.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So Sudarshan Chakra Kriya is just one of those unlocking Kriyas then? Just one of the 3?
Sudarshan Chakra Kriya is the main Kriya, and from it, there's others that sprout out of that. They kind of help the process of, once you've done them, you'll go back to it. Sudarshan Chakra Kriya is something that takes time to master, to understand, and for its energy to work, for it as a science, for it as a technology. I mean, if I have a mala, for example, a mala is just beads. It's the mantra that I recite on it, the amount of days that I recite it for, and the sadhana that I develop out of that begins to transform my mind and actually cultivate the process of mantra, which is the transformation of mind. Likewise with the kiryas, the kriyas. You know, kriya itself means, you know, non-action action. You know, it comes from this time when Buddhism in the Pali tradition was developing words to understand, you know, spiritual actions that transform our mind, but are so spiritual that they're not in the realm of, you know, actual action, which is very confusing. But essentially, a kirya or a kriya is, you know, a science, a technology that, when cultivated, when used, cultivates certain realization, certain levels of esotericism, certain levels of mysticism that allows you to then move on in your spiritual journey. And this is why they were used, because we did not have time to sit there reading books. We didn't. But what we did have time for was to be able to sit down and to do breath work for 15 minutes and to completely transform the way that we thought about the world around us, the way we corresponded with it. And of course, that was heightened as well with different helping aids like Shahid Dig, which is, you know, the famous psychedelic drink of the Khalsa, which today is very much abused by different groups, but was initially intended to be an access point into the spiritual realm, as well as a guide to access the spiritual knowledge of the elders, as well as interact with them in a way that when you practice these kind of teachings, you can again advance at a heightened rate that allows you to be stabilized and grounded with, you know, a harmonic movement in your spirituality. So, you know, we're talking about a deeply developed science that belonged to the elders. You know, these Kriyasana techniques combined with the overarching, overbearing theology of Shabd-Centrism and the focus on Nam, you know, can do wonders. And we've got loads of texts about such techniques as well. So the fact that those are coming to light, you know, is really interesting too. So it's a combined effort now. You know, people can shoot down the system of Kundalini Yoga, but in reality, it's been here for a long time. It will continue to be here for a long time. And it does belong to the Khalsa because it's very much authentically anchored in you know, what the aims of the Khalsa are. What are our spiritual aims? You know, I ask a lot of people, why do you practice Kundalini Yoga? And they can't tell me. And I say, well, that's the problem, isn't it? You're practicing this yoga, you don't know what you're practicing it for. The aim is to dissolve the self in the infinity of Shabad, or for the self to give way, for it to embrace and surrender to the infinity of the Shabad, and for Shabad to be realized as the true nature of reality. Sat Nam, you know?
I mean, you talk about Kundalini Yoga as coming from Guru Gobind Singh Ji and being a
So
technology.
I separate Kundalini Yoga and Shabd Kriya Yoga.
Right.
Kundalini Yoga is something that develops out of Shabd Kriya Yoga, and therefore is not the same, but in essence, in reality of its practice is. But there's a lot of things that Yogi Bhajan develops that are strictly from his time and his interplay with other traditions, you know, his inspiration of and whatever, you know.
Does that have a lot to do with like Guru Ram Das Ji then? Because he had a very, you know, open relationship with Guru Ram Das Ji, as opposed to his relationship with any other gurus, because he talked about that guru the most. And, you know, that's where
it's quintessentially what Guru Ram Das represents. And it's Raj Yoga. And Raj Yoga is synonymous with Unamani, synonymous with Brahm Gyan, synonymous with these different words. I mean, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika actually says this. This is, you know, a really good yogic text if ever you have time to read it. You know, it's a good English translation of it. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika talks about how a lot of these different terms that we use to describe enlightenment are actually synonymous with each other, you know. And so Guru Ram Das sits on the throne of Raj Yoga. We, as the Khalsa, sit on the throne of Raj Yoga now. So Guru Ram Das, Sodhi Sache Padshah, the first of the Sodhi kings or the Sodhi dynasty of the Sikh Panth, the Sodhi gurus, you know, because they're all related to Guru Ram Das after Guru Ram Das, is that we're directly related to that energy. So how do we bring that into the fundamental reality of now? And this is why Yogi Bhajan would say, you know, I don't have any sant, I don't have any Mahapurush apart from Guru Ram Das. He's my standard for that. And that makes sense. And that's what he's talking about. But that's what he's hearkening onto, and why Guru Ram Das is invoked. Because the energy to bring that level of mastery into your life is the ultimate goal of a Khalsa. So, you know, I can't comment more on that because, you know, I didn't know Yogi Bhajan personally. And you know, there's more to it than what I'm saying, but I can only comment on a level of understanding how that specific understanding of Guru Ram Das could aid the vehicle that would become Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah, solid, man, solid. That's great questions, great conversation, great discussion. I'd like to learn a little bit more about you too, bro. Like, you know, you connected with the teacher. I don't even know where you live, man. Like, are you in the UK right now?
Yeah, I'm in the UK right now, but when I was younger, at the age of 16, I went on a trip to India, and that's where I met my teacher.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience for you, like who your teacher is and like that experience?
Yeah, so my teacher's name was Baba Teja Singh Ji. You know, they came from this familial lineage of Akali. So before the Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal, you know, standardized themselves in the 50s, because obviously prior to that, these understandings of the Nihangs and the army system didn't exist, because it had been dissolved way before by earlier Nihang leaders, and they began to call themselves the Akali Panth, and then the British then are very responsible for dispersing the Nihangs everywhere. And then I think it's around the early 1900s that the Nihangs start coming back together again and, you know, reorganizing themselves under the system of Buddha Dal and Dharna Dal. But Baba Teja Singh came before that. You know, they were very much before that. When I met them, they were 100 and something years old. You know, they didn't really know their age. But we got photographic evidence of them with Baba Sahib Singh Kalatari, which is, I think, a photograph from 1920. And you can see them probably around my age or in their 30s or something, you know, looking exactly the same as they did in when I met them in 2014. But yeah, so I met this teacher. He basically introduced me this understanding of Abhyas, because I was very interested in abhyas and different techniques of trying to attain to enlightenment. That was very much my goal as a kid, that I wanted to obtain enlightenment. And that was because I was very much inspired by the story of Siddhartha Gautam becoming the Buddha, sitting under the Bodhi tree and everything. So a lot of my early discussions with my teacher were all based upon, what did the Buddha achieve and how can I achieve that? And he would go, forget that. The Buddhas are just that Gyan Khand. What you can achieve through Gurmat is beyond that. And so it was very much opening up my perspective and showing me a system of meditation and movement of the body, clarity of mind that, for him was fundamental to Gurmat, and facilitating an embodiment of Guru Nanak's teachings.
Yeah, beautiful, man. And did you know about Kundalini Yoga from Yogi Bhajan?
No, I didn't. At that time, at the age of 16, I knew about Sikhnet, but I didn't know anything about, the world of Kundalini Yoga, because I was an average, brown, Punjabi, UK-born child who knew just as much as everyone else about different things. I mean, I think at that age I was quite naive, and I thought the Khalsa was like one collective tradition without other traditions in it. Like at that age, I was very oblivious to what we would now understand. We wish it was that simple. It's not that simple, in other words. I knew about the Nihangs though, and I was very fascinated about them from a very early age. For me, they embodied something more authentic than what I was seeing in different groups, so that was what drew me to my teacher as well, the fact that he was a Nihang of all different manifestations, that he was a Nihang. I again didn't really know what that meant either. I just again thought that these old Babbe are enlightened souls, and they're the leaders of this united naive Khalsa image. Again, he fixed my understanding of a lot of things. So yeah.
And so then you, at some point, came back to the UK after studying in India with your teacher, and you, at some point, learned that there's a Kundalini Yoga out there.
He gave me names of people, places, things, systems of learning, which I would then be able to put together through Google searches and through speaking to people and whatever, expand my knowledge on, oh, there's this. He told me about Kundalini Yoga. He taught me about who Yogi Bhajan was, because there are many stories that he told me about a young Singh called Harbhajan Singh, who was part of the lineage, who he would call Shorta Buddha, so this little old man, essentially, who was, very mischievous and don't do what he did here, don't do what he did there, because my teacher had instructed him in different times and places with Sant Hazara Singh. So
was your teacher a student of Sant Hazara Singh?
My teacher was not a student of Sant Hazara Singh. My teacher was older than Sant Hazara Singh.
I see.
So he was the son of Sant Hazara Singh's teacher. So Baba Teja Singh, my teacher, was supposed to inherit the seat of this school of learning, the Sher Yogi lineage. But there was a split based upon the need to make the identity of the lineage a bit more secret. So instead of wearing, full-on Nihang garb, let's, wear white clothes. Let's not be so overtly, militaristic in our identity. Baba Teja Singh was like, well, I'm not gonna, give this up. Sant Hazara Singh was like, well, we're gonna have to, so I will do that. They didn't fight with each other. There wasn't fighting in the lineage. That was not how it was presented to me anyway. But because of that, Baba Teja Singh then went into solitude, and he would come out from time and again to guide, to be present with Sant Hazara Singh whenever it was deemed necessary. But there was no infighting, because Baba Teja Singh made a point of not creating his own body of students. He went into solitude. He went into the mountains and the caves, and that's where he met the teacher Baba Lempoji, which you guys might know as Lama Lilenpo. You know, I was taught his name was Baba Lempo. And they met at a very important shrine where Tibetan Buddhism intersects with the Sikh tradition. And that's where Baba Lempoji then met Sant Hazara Singh, and there was, you know, the reintroduction of Baba Teja Singh into the lineage, and, you know, this whole understanding of how that developed as well. So they're very, that part of history is something I, as a scholar, want to look into more, want to understand more, based upon the little that I do know, because it was a very formative aspect of the history of the Sher Yogis, especially in the fact that Baba Teja Singh was so willing to sacrifice his voice for the sake of Sant Hazara Singh being able to teach, but in the same sense, not be very egotistical about it. Like, oh, I'm going to create a rival school, or we're going to create a splinter or a split off. He knew how sensitive and important it was to not do that. Even though he was the son of the previous teacher, you know, there was so many, for me, it's inspiring because it teaches me how to be humble and not egotistical, you know, so there's so much you can take away from it.
Yeah, I think it's actually remarkably fascinating, man, to hear of another element within this world of Kundalini Yoga, especially in the time that we're in right now, and hearing some references, especially as a student who has learned of as you say, Shabd Kriya Yoga and its relationship to Kundalini Yoga based on what Yogi Bhajan had taught, validity, giving some validity to the teachings, to a lineage, to a structure of knowledge, understanding how Yogi Bhajan would have taken this and then kind of reformed it in a way to teach Westerners, especially that some of the traditional things. And there's a lot of references to his lectures that speak about, you know, I would never teach it the way, you would never be students of mine or developing teachers yourself if you were taught the way that my teacher taught me, and so forth. And there's a lot of references that you speak to that. I think it's fascinating to hear and learn about another lineage of a yoga form that is Sikhi based, that goes back, that also is the same reference to what Yogi Bhajan had talked about with, I mean, he would talk about references as like, oh, you know, Shaheeds of Guru Gobind Singh, you know, that they had such power and prowess about who they were, such consciousness that they were reciting Japji, you know, at the time of their death, that they're getting joints cut limb by limb. But, oh, you know, the executioner is saying, you know, like about to cut at the thumb at one joint. And he says, no, there's another joint here. If you're going to do it, follow the order. Like, what is the spirit of a person that says, you're about to kill me, you're about to execute me in a very painful, torturous way, and to do it with such, like, you know, such available consciousness.
I mean, where was this higher aspect of consciousness coming from? You know, in the ultimate teaching I was taught was, you know, this term nihang. It doesn't refer to magarmach. It doesn't refer to being a crocodile or an alligator or whatever. My teacher said these are very superficial, low understandings. He said this term nihang means the entire understanding of the annihilation of conceptualization. Man ki vritti da nas, you know, you're coming away from mind, low-based mind activity and experiencing infinity, embodying infinity. And he said, thus why a true nihang is actually not even called a nihang, it's called an akali. Because ode vich te akal de vich ki fark hai? What's the difference between him and akal? And that's Guru Gobind Singh's ultimate position. This is what he wanted for the Khalsa. Whatever technology you embody. You know, what's important about this is the underlying technology of Shabd Kriya is the original Gurmukh Yoga Vyas, which has been, you know, solidified through basic understandings of Nam Simran that we have today. And what is the seed or the deeper jewel of Gurmukh Yoga Vyas? It's Shabd-Centrism, and how that proliferates into every other science within Sikhi, whether it be, you know, Rag, whether that be Shastra Vidya, whether that be, you know, Santya, whether that be how to tie the star or how to do seva. You know, it gives the contextual basis for the rest of those sciences. You take that bij away, which is the fundamental understanding of the root of the bij mantra, essentially the seed of what Gurmat is, and you have the mess we have today. So Shabd-Centrism is not only the, you know, the primary teaching and a vehicle through which harmony can be re-established in the Panth, but at the same time, it was because it was taken away that we're in the chaos we're in today, you know? So it's very interesting, you know?
I feel called to say something now.
Go ahead.
I would just, as you're talking about this Shabd-Centrism, it's a new term I haven't quite heard before. But to me, the symbol or the analogy I always have is you have the earth plane and it's composed of vibration. And then you always have these divine figures, heavenly figures, teachers who are bringing in a heavenly vibration. I mean, if you want to call this a Christianized concept, this is just the idea that I have, which is that the Gurus were really there to create, you don't bring heaven on earth. What? Because heaven on earth, when the divine vibration mixes with earthly vibration, it actually creates paradise. So the Gurus were creating paradise every moment that they walked, everything that they did and spoke and created. Darbar means paradise on earth, because that is the environment that is created when you bring these heavenly vibrations into this earthly realm. And sometimes it looks like war, sometimes it looks like
the
peace, whatever it is.
compartmentalization of the khans. You know, the khans are both internal processes whilst at the same time being external realities as well, you know? I mean, you look at that translation of Mool Mantra that you typed out on SeekNet a couple, like I think last week or so on, based upon the audio clip that I did for BBC. If you just read that out and compare it to what you're saying now, because I think it links in with what you're saying. Because I don't have a physical copy, so if you just pull it up.
Well, we could pull it up, but my thought was not yet complete.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Shabd-Centrism, you know, you're talking about putting Shabd into martial arts, putting Shabd into eating. That's langar. It's like how to take the divine energy and put it into the things of the world. Well, what's the most heavenly way to eat food? Do it langar, chant the Nam the whole time, imbue the food itself with the vibration, eat with the vibration, serve it this way. Every single thing about this is taking the most mundane, basic thing we all need to have, which is food, and making it the most heavenly thing that could. Physical fitness, we all need to keep our bodies in shape in order to live and create a paradise. So let's do it in the most divine way by imbuing ourselves, by chanting the entire time, and by respecting the weapons and doing this in the most selfless way as well. So it's like taking every aspect of the basic human life and imbuing it with as much vibration and Shabad as possible. And I was going to share an experience that I had where I went to a Sikhi camp. It was a wonderful camp. The Sevadars, I really just felt very strongly. They're very heart-centered, very, very good intentioned Sevadars. I mean, just nice people. And but the kids were misbehaving quite a bit. The kids were really misbehaving. And I told all the Sevadars, I was, look, we need to get together and we need to do something difficult together. Because once all of us leaders and Sevadars, once we bond in that way, something melds between us and automatically the children will fall in line and they will start to sort themselves out, because it's on us to represent. It's on us to be together. And so day after day, they didn't quite get why I was trying to form a meeting before the camp. I mean, God bless us. We're getting up early enough anyways, where everybody's doing it on volunteer time. And I'm saying on top of it, we got to keep each other on check and we got to do something more difficult. Why? Because like they didn't quite hit. And then finally one day, I convinced everybody, let's get together before the camp and we're going to do something. I will lead it. It will be difficult. Let's do it. They'd never seen it before. It's called Shabd Kriya. They couldn't handle it. I mean, for me, I can do it. 11 minutes that's easy, especially we're doing this one, which by the way, Gurmukh keep me in. He doesn't respect that. That's not how he was taught. It was, you know, it's a more difficult one. But these are people who've never done any of this kind of stuff, and we're all pumped up on sugar, and nobody does meditation, much less that kind of plank and exercises like that. So anyways, I managed to get people to do more than 3 minutes. I think we did about 5 minutes. And the whole time it was just thank God they had enough respect just to go along with the process, because I don't think they would have, you know, who's going to want to do some foreign wacky thing? It's like, it's so foreign. And anyways, we did it. We did the relaxation. And then the same as the day before, we meet the kids in the darbar. Downstairs was the main darbar. these girls, they were 10 and 11 years old or something. They were really nice singing of Mool Mantra that they were doing. It was beautiful chanting every day. But this day, we were all crying. This day, I walked in the darbar and it was just like, oh, see, I just knew that there's bhakti is filling the air here. We are bringing this sense of devotion. We're bringing the heavens. There's just a little something that's not quite connecting to really connect it with the earth. It's floating in the air. We need to just plant it in the ground right now. And somehow I knew that if we do Shabd Kriya, we're going to put it into our nervous system and we will be able to connect with, God bless you guys. It's so amazing the devotion that Punjabi Sangat can create. It's unbelievable. And it's like, if we could just have more of this, really connecting it to the earth. So what happened was, these girls were singing the same exact that they were doing the day before, only we're all crying. There's one Banji, one Auntie Ji. She had this philosophy that I have to not wear a turban. I have to only wear a dupatta because nobody's gonna relate to me otherwise. I have to be relatable. And if I wear a turban, then I'm a quote unquote Amritdhari, and then all the other girls, you know, who I actually want to reach, they're not going to listen to me. So she's been in like a very prominent Auntie Ji for decades. And that's a big thing she does, is these camps. And before getting to the darbar is like after the shoe room, right? That's where you enter the actual darbar. When you enter in the gurdwara is the other door. She enters into the outside door and she was hit by something, some energy. And a voice came to her, or not a voice, but a confirmation came to her. She knew, I will wear a turban, and I can always wear a turban from now on. It's not a negative, it's not gonna make me less relatable. I can go ahead and wear a turban. And then she came in the main darbar, she was also crying the entire time. And it's like the Guru's presence was floating in the air, just ready for us. And something about doing Shabd Kriya with us sevadars, not even the kids, it just connected in such a way. It just connected our physiology. It connected our nervous system to these divine vibration, which we are meant to bring to earth as Sikhs. We have the Shabad, this vibration all around us. It's all about raising the vibration of the earth. It's very easy to say for anybody to say, oh, well, let's raise our vibration. Oh, love is a vibration. This is like such an easy rhetoric for any spiritual person to talk about. But when you have an experience like this, it's like, it's so literal, it's so real, it's so visceral. And that's the point. That's when you were saying before about what is Sikhi is an experience. And it's like, are we really that phobic that we can't just do these divine techniques that are going to just take us that extra little mile? We have the devotion. And that was the irony to me, is like, so much of Kundalini Yoga, it's atheists and yoga students who want nothing to do with religion, and who are not very sold with the whole idea of devotion, because they think that devotion means I give up myself, whereas I should find God within it's a very self-determined, very Western view. And most yoga students, they don't really have this thing where I should just give up and be devoted, and I got to chant some mantras, I don't even know what they mean. So it's like, typically Kundalini Yoga, these incredible techniques, they're not, this is the Shakti. I consider it the Shakti. And you need the balance between the Shakti and the Bhakti. So the irony is, here you have the massive people who are doing these incredible things. They're typically more involved with the whole Shakti mentality. Not that that's bad, but it's like, let's bring more devotion. Let's bring more Bhakti over here. And the people who are so incredible and beautiful with the Bhakti, they're now avoidant. They have a phobia and an avoidance to include any of the Shakti thing to balance that all out. And it's like, that's why I love conversations, you know, and with you guys and anybody who is able to do the both. And that's the whole thing, this whole thing about Khalsa Yogi. And then Gurbaj, I have to say, like, every time I talk with you, it strikes me how clear you are. That's the main word I would use for you, just clarity. It's just the way to see it all and just say it, just line all the pieces up together and just say it clearly. I mean, I'm just trying to retranslate with this story because I'm a story guy, and to try to retell what you're saying with such scholastic like precision, but just such mental clarity. I just have to compliment you like that and say the clarity you have, and thank you so much. Thank you.
it's fundamental that we understand that this science is of the Shabad Guru and is the Shabad Guru. You know, we are just vessels, conduits for being able to express that. Sikhi for so long has been confined, strangulated, prevented from being able to just express itself for what it fundamentally is. You know, my teacher taught me a really fundamental teaching, the one teaching that he said was the biggest gift and jewel that he had received from his teacher, that his teacher had received from his teacher, that Guru Gobind Singh ultimately had received from Guru Nanak, and that was the teaching of Shabd-Centrism. That is the teaching of Gurmat. He said, look after it. There's nothing more precious than this. This is Naam. This is what Bhai Gurdas says, Hatho Hathi Paya, right? What was it that was placed from hand to hand in the system of Yoga, the system of Shabad, the jewel of Shabd-Centrism? That Naam, the primal sound, is something that you can access because it is what is creating this entire projection of your being, of yourself. That's it. You know, that is the clarity for me, you know, because take me out of the equation. I'm just you know, just a normal person like everybody else. There's nothing really significant about me. The only thing that is significant about any of this science, about any of this anything, is the Shabad. You know, the only thing that's significant about this universe is that it is a projection of the Shabad. That's the fundamental core. You know, so if ever anyone wants to, you know, minimize the science into their identity or their personality, or create a cult of personality out of that, like we've seen recently with a new video that came out, you know, it's ridiculous, because fundamentally, if you're not talking about the Shabad, if you're not saying that the Shabad is the ultimate master of this, I mean, you know, the Ardhavaka mantra of this lineage is Om Namo Gurudev Namo. What does that mean? It means I bow to the primal sound, Om, Gurudev Namo, which I identify as my Gurudev, Namo, I bow to it. Because the primal sound is the string between every teacher, right?
You know what I just thought? The Guru Gadi story is all about, the way I termed it was, you have the written Guru and then you have the human Guru. So you have the Guru is one. It's all about vibration, but the vibration is knowledge, it is wisdom, it is mastery. It manifests itself in the written form as the teachings, and the person who embodies it is the human Guru. And you have levels of Guru up until Satguru, and then after that is, you know, that's the highest achievement a human can do, to embody the Shabad Guru. Well, what you just said, Om Namo Gurudev Namo, isn't that the same thing? The written Guru is the Om, is the Shabad Guru. The Gurgati is the Guru Granth Sahib, the written Guru. That's the Om, and we Namo the Om, the vibration, the actual primal essence, the untaintable, the unbroken,
the
vibration.
unfettered,
Gurudev Namo is the embodiment, the person, the Guru Khalsa, the Satguru, the human embodiment. So this whole thing that Guru Gobind Singh gave the Guru Gadi to Shabad Guru and to Guru Khalsa is encapsulated in this mantra, Om Namo Gurudev Namo.
100,000%. Yeah. You see Harsimar going, you know.
I'm taking my phone and drop it back.
Yeah, it you know, my teacher would always say, Meri Piri Har Khalsa, right? Meri Piri Har Khalsa. So Meri Piri Har Khalsa, Meri Piri Har Khalsa, which is that Meri Piri is the science that came from Har to the Khalsa, and that Meri Piri, when embodied, is every Khalsa, right? So, you know, this is what it is. It's the balance between the practical and the transcendental, the foundational and the etherical, however you want to say it, however you want to see it. It's the Tao, it's the balance between the yin and the yang. You know, what's more significant about the yin and the yang isn't even the interlocking of the black and the white, but it's the circle which bounds them in that eternal dance. You know, Hukum Rajai Chalana Nanak Likya Nad. And so this is the same thing here. The physical manifestation, the sargun and the nirgun, which, you know, in the philosophies of India have eternally been in debate with each other. Is God physical? Is he non-physical? Is he a he or is he a she or is it an it? You know, Guru Nanak says, forget all of that. Ik God binds the whole thing into a balance, into a harmony. You know.
Satnam Shri.
You know.
Well, hey guys.
Gurmukh Pyareo, I have to go very soon.
Yeah. No, it's very good. I think we're gonna close this up here real quick here. I'm gonna pause this recording and actually I'm gonna stop this recording. You guys cool with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.